YouTube, how's it going? The Goat House is back, and I got my updated college football rankings here just before Week 13 starts, and a lot of movement and a lot more firm identities on teams for me. It's been based off, for the most part, body of work, and it still is. That's how it is in college football, but I feel a lot more comfortable with the identity on a lot of these teams. I didn't consider any other team besides these 25 here. It's all about ordering them. And you can see there the biggest movers in a positive way, the negative way. We'll talk about where those teams rank and why they're moving that much when we get there. So I'm very excited to do this here as we're getting to the college football playoff. We'll talk about what the playoff could look like as well. But before we get started, 40K, that's our subscriber goal by 2020. So appreciate you guys. If you subscribe, help us get to that goal. Full NFL coverage as well. So if you haven't seen any of that, check it out and more to come. Click that like button. Check us out on Twitter at GoatHouseNFL. There's a link in the description. Extra content on our Patreon as well. There's a link in the description for that too. To the rankings. So as you can see, the big movers here, 3 big risers and 3 big fallers. Obviously, there's other teams that they're on the rise and other teams that are on the fall. But these are the main ones. And you may be confused by some. We're going to break it down when we get there. And like I said, feel pretty comfortable about a lot of identities on teams at this point of the season, really conferences in general too. Number 25 is going to be Oklahoma State. We see the College Football Playoff Committee likes them a lot. Their very first ranking, they had them in there. I think they're really focusing on their losses. They're pretty impressive schedule, I guess. The strength of schedule is up there. They don't have the greatest wins. They're looking more and more impressive as the season goes on, I should say. And they're a good team. They're in the top 25. Like I said, I did not consider any other teams but the top 25 that I selected here. Usually I'm putting other teams in consideration. Oklahoma State makes it. I think the other committees, the other polls are too focused on the losses. I think those other polls, they value losses way too much. Number 24 is Appalachian State. Oklahoma State was not ranked for me last week, and either was Appalachian State. As this video goes on, I will mention where each of these teams were last week. Both these teams so far were not ranked. You see 4 teams at the bottom right did drop out. Usually it's 3 teams that drop out, round there. We got 4 this week. Appalachian State, only 1 loss. Obviously, I'm a little more impressed with some other teams with more losses. I just think they're better teams. But Appalachian State with good wins over North Carolina, South Carolina, tough loss against Georgia Southern. I guess that's what's kind of keeping them down for below the teams with more losses than them. I think losses could be a bad thing. I think the other polls, the other committees really think they could be a good thing at times. And I understand maybe a little bit, but I don't know. Appalachian State at 24 for me. Georgia State was giving them a little scare for a little bit, and then Appalachian State just completely blew them away. So that was an impressive game. And number 23, another new team into the rankings. As you can see, we're going to have 4 new teams. Virginia Tech, pretty impressive schedule. Again, I don't value losses, but a couple weeks ago they played Notre Dame pretty tight, so that's you kind of get an idea of what this team's about. But they don't get bonus points for barely losing to a good team. That's not how I do things here, but a pretty good team. They're mixing different quarterbacks in there. They got a good win against Wake Forest a couple weeks ago. So it's really nothing they did this past week, though, to move them up. It's just the 4 teams dropping out and them having a more impressive resume than maybe some other teams you may consider ahead of them that I do not have ahead of them. So VTech's at number 23 for now. Number 22, and actually moving down from 20 to 22 is Boise State. And nothing they did, once again, so we're clear here, just other teams moving up, and like I said, more of an identity, more of a firm identity. We think we have kind of a grasp on some of these teams throughout the year, but now we're really getting it. Looking at teams, but also who teams play, conferences, what they're all about. So they're actually down to 22, and again, really nothing they did. They haven't been super impressive this year, though. Look at their resume. It's nothing special. That Florida State win, I think people got a little too hyped on that. Nothing crazy, nothing out of the, nothing that's unusual here for Boise State. And SMU's basically in the same boat. Same grouping here. They got them at 21. They got some impressive wins for being SMU this year. They only have one loss. Memphis is a pretty darn good team this year. So they are number 21. Number 20, a reason for SMU to move down from 19 to 21 and for Boise to move down from 20 to 22 is Iowa. I did not have them ranked last week because they had 3 losses on top of me. Looking at their wins, do they have any wins that are that impressive to me? No, they do not. Now they get a great win against Minnesota. But it is a great win, and that's why they're moving up. They played some good competition here and there. Mainly, I think other committees are valuing their losses, and that's why they'll probably have them ahead of 20, better than 20, unlike me. Looking at that Minnesota-Iowa game, I really wasn't impressed with either team. Obviously, more impressed with Iowa. Didn't think there was that great of play. Some solid defensive plays. I mean, there's top-tier NFL draft talent that actually played pretty well. But a sloppy game. Was not impressed with the teams. And I will talk more of my thoughts on the Big Ten as this goes on. A lot of good Big Ten teams ranked, but not necessarily thrilled with them at the moment. Number 19 is Texas A&M, another 3-loss team that I boosted up because I know this team's identity. It's a tough schedule. They got some good wins recently. They're getting better. They're getting a lot better. This team is definitely better than number 19 in the country when it's all said and done. But body of work and your resume definitely plays a part here, so they're down at 19. So they got Georgia this week too, so that's a big-time game there. They're up to 19, and they were number 25 last week. So we know this is a good team. They're up because they're a good team. So we see them in the biggest movers. They're from 25 to 19. We saw Iowa go from unranked to 20. We're moving on here. Cincinnati remains at 18, and we'll reveal Memphis because we kind of can compare the two teams. Memphis at 17. This is kind of going back to other committees, other polls, valuing losses almost more than wins, it seems like at this point. Cincinnati lost to Ohio State, therefore they're ahead of Memphis. That's like the only logical reasoning they got over there. Memphis to me has better wins, just plain and simple there, beating SMU, beating Navy. They just have better wins. Cincinnati lost 42-0 to Ohio State, and that's getting valued a little too much. Cincinnati's a darn good team. They've been executing very well. Besides, they've had some close games here and there that you think they'd be more comfortable in, but they've been a very good team, so don't get me wrong. It's just Memphis' body of work. Two teams that you can't really 100% say one has executed better than the other or one is definitely better than the other. We have a firm identity on which one's better. Two very, very similar teams going off body of work. To me, Memphis should be ahead of Cincinnati, and it's kind of been that way for the last few weeks. Number 16, Wisconsin. They got some good wins in the Big Ten. Can't keep up with the big boys, I guess, and they have that very tough loss to Illinois. So I just really didn't think about moving them ahead of 16. They were at 16 last week as well. No consideration of moving them up, even though Auburn has 3 losses and down. I still have, on the way down, but I still have Auburn ahead of Wisconsin. Just much more impressive team. Similar style teams, but Auburn is the better team to me. So Auburn goes from 13 to 15 with their 3rd loss of the season. So they moved down 2 spots. At 14, Notre Dame, they play a ranked Navy team, and it's a game Notre Dame should handle, really no problem. But it was a ranked Navy team, and it's I had a feeling that it was going to be close, and Notre Dame went out there and executed very well and outplayed them completely. So that's worth something, I guess. They're up 1 spot to number 14, and then number 13, who handled Notre Dame quite well this year, is Michigan, just up 1 spot because Auburn's moving down. Nothing crazy. Still a pretty disappointing season, from the first half. And it's kind of my thing on the Big Ten. I guess we'll talk about it more in a little bit. Number 12 is Baylor. They were number 9. They had that win against Oklahoma, but you look at that game, they got every gift they can get. Everything went their way pretty much early, I should say, and they just couldn't hang on to that game. They couldn't hang on to that game. It's really because Oklahoma, is the better team at the end of the day. That's how they came back. And Baylor had a shot to win that game and a shot for the playoff. They won that game. They couldn't hang on with, again, everything going their way. How could they be ranked? Even with 1 loss, how could they be ranked ahead of some, maybe 2-loss teams or other 1-loss teams mainly, I should say. So they're down to 12. The only reason they didn't drop down further is because I'm not really blown away by, Michigan's resume this season. I'm not blown away. The other Big Ten teams, some of them have 3 losses. Notre Dame hasn't been super impressive this year, and they got blown out by Michigan. Auburn has 3 losses, so that's why Baylor couldn't move down anymore. But That game says a lot, that Oklahoma game, because like I said, everything went their way early. It's a game they should have put away, and they did not. Staying at number 11 is Penn State, and this is kind of what has me, and then we'll reveal number 10 as well. We'll go Minnesota at 10. And Penn State stayed at 11. Minnesota had up at 4 just because, they were undefeated and they had a big win over a Penn State team who I had at 5 the week before. But now is more of the, it's not. I have more of an identity on Big Ten teams now, realistically. I talked about the Iowa-Minnesota game. I was not impressed with that game whatsoever. That game. Obviously, I'm more impressed with Iowa, but the game in general, not impressed with it because they're very sloppy. Neither team played good. I mean, those teams just did not look like teams that can put up a fight with some of these other teams up here. So Penn State, I can't have Penn State ahead of Minnesota. Minnesota just handled them pretty well a week ago. Penn State doesn't have the most, the best resume. I think the committee is valuing the Big Ten too much. They're all beating each other. Indiana was ranked, but really we know how good really Indiana is. It's nothing special. And Penn State's been close with some other teams they shouldn't be. Yeah, we see these Big Ten teams play minus Ohio State, play non-conference games, and they kind of don't play that impressive. They're kind of close, and then they go beat up on each other. It's kind of back and forth. Nothing is showing me that these Big Ten teams, other than Ohio State, are as good as the committee or other people think they are. They're just playing each other. They're playing what looks like good games to some people against each other. I'm just not super impressed. I mean, I do have a team at 10 and 11 in the Big Ten. There's a team at 13. It's just because other teams, what's going on with the other teams? Obviously, Baylor has to drop, and I kind of broke down. Notre Dame hasn't been too impressive. Auburn has 3 losses. And then the weaker schedules of teams like Memphis and Cincinnati. So that's why Minnesota is at 10, Penn State's at 11. I think something else that makes committees and other people overvalue the Big Ten is really one game, is that Michigan-Notre Dame game. Michigan blew out Notre Dame, and there's a couple things there. That game didn't go to plan, I guess. It was a downpour. It was in Michigan. And Michigan was a better team, the tougher team, plain and simple. But Notre Dame isn't as good as the committee thought. They thought they could be a playoff team. They are nowhere near the team they were last year. So I think they're valuing that win for the whole entire Big Ten way too much, way, way too much. And that's kind of set off a chain reaction here. These Big Ten teams just aren't, that Minnesota-Iowa game, it just showed me those two teams just cannot play with the big boys. I know that for a fact now. So not thrilled with the Big Ten other than Ohio State, but they still have quite a few teams ranked up here. But I'm just not thrilled in them in terms of, top-tier teams, I should say. And that's why Florida actually moves from 12 to number 9. So you may have been confused about the big movers, how Florida is up that much from beating Missouri. They played a really good defensive game. Yeah, they could have put up more points, but it's more of, I know for a fact Florida is better than Michigan, Penn State, Baylor, and the resume shows it too. They have more losses than those teams, but they've played a much, much harder schedule. I don't know who comes up with the strength of schedule. I don't know where Florida is in that, but I know they have some Big Ten teams higher on the strength of schedule. But I completely disagree with that. Florida had a much harder schedule, much more impressive. They are better than Minnesota and Penn State, teams like that. So they are at number 9, and I feel very strongly about that. I think you guys could tell. Number 8 is Oklahoma. Wouldn't be completely shocked if the committee put them ahead of some other teams we're about to talk about. But Kansas State lost a little tough. I know Kansas State's not the worst team. You don't really have too many impressive, real impressive wins. The Texas win's really not super impressive anymore. The Baylor win was impressive. You come back from behind, Baylor was undefeated, so that's your impressive win. Is it enough to move them into the top 7 to me? And it's close, but no. And then number 7 is going to be the Oregon Ducks. And I have a battle here with the 2 Pac-12 teams, and I hope and they should win out. And I hope, because that would be a great game in the Pac-12 championship between Oregon and Utah. 2 very solid teams. The winner of that is most likely deserving of a playoff spot, in my opinion. Oregon lost the first game of the year to Auburn, a game I thought they outplayed Auburn, but things hold them back. The offense, the coaching staff gets conservative at times, and that kind of what cost them in that game. Been impressive ever since. They do have the talent, so they should be that impressive. And now we're going to talk about my top 6. I will break down why Utah is ahead of Oregon. People questioned that last time. So as you can see, my top 6 there. Utah is number 6 ahead of Oregon, and people questioned that in the comments last week, even though I explained it in the video. And kind of going back to the committee valuing losses, who they played. One example, like I already brought up, was Cincinnati lost to Ohio State, so that's a good loss. To me, there's rare amounts of good losses, and that's definitely not one of them to me. Yeah, it's the number 2 team, but they got blown out. That's just one example. They're all over the place. So looking at Oregon's loss to Auburn, a game they should have won, but they kind of choked a little bit. Utah's loss is what I actually consider somewhat of a good loss. It was to USC, who Oregon actually handled pretty well. But if you watch the game, Utah's best player and one of the better players in the country, really, in Zach Moss, got hurt early in that game. And even their quarterback, Tyler Huntley, was playing hurt throughout that game. He got shooken up during that game and was actually questionable for the next week. So if they were fully healthy within that game, it's not like they went in that game with those guys hurt. It was kind of just fluky things. And if they were fully healthy, they would have won that game. To me, that's a good loss because they're not undefeated at the end of the day. They lost, but they're very close to undefeated because of that. They've also been executing very, very well on both sides of the ball. You look at the UCLA game. UCLA win, maybe not the most impressive win based on because it's UCLA, but it's a team that was on a 3-game winning streak and beating some pretty good Pac-12 teams, and Utah handled them very well. A team that is very impressive on both sides of the ball. Oregon is as well. The winner, it really doesn't matter if I have Utah at 6 and Oregon at 7 or flipped. It really doesn't matter. These two teams got to go out, win, and play each other, and the winner of that game will be the Pac-12 champion. They will be higher for me, don't worry. And right now, it's hard to say right now, but I think that winner of that Pac-12 game should be in the playoff. So I like both those teams a lot. I think Oregon should be the better team, but will they be? That's the question. But Oregon does play Arizona State this upcoming week, and I still think that could be a valuable win. Not like obviously they're not ranked, but if Oregon handles Arizona State pretty darn well, they can move ahead of Utah. They're both in the same boat here. Very impressed with both those teams. Alabama at 5, no movement there. Obviously, Tua being hurt out for the season is just very unfortunate, but they're still a very good team. They have tons and tons of NFL talent. They can win. They may need some help, though. And I moved Georgia from 6 to 4, getting that win over Auburn. Auburn's a very solid team, and that kind of builds to the resume as well. On top of Georgia clearly getting better. Since the South Carolina loss, they have gotten better. Since the Notre Dame game, which I thought they looked sloppy, and they've gotten better, and they still beat Notre Dame. They beat Notre Dame, they beat Florida, which is a very good team, and now they beat Auburn. So the resume is good. They're getting better. That loss is pretty bad, though. But to me, they did enough to go to 4 here. They did enough to go to 4. It's basically what they have to do. Texas A&M could be a trap game. Definitely could be a trap game. They have to continue to win out, and they have to win that SEC championship because unfortunately, if they lose that, a team like Utah, Oregon, the winner of the Pac-12, could hop because that is a valuable win they may get. So Georgia's at 4. Clemson being undefeated. They remain at 3, but Clemson, an undefeated team, is nowhere near impressive as the other undefeated teams in Ohio State, my number 2, LSU number 1. I think pretty even teams in terms of talent, what they've shown execution-wise throughout the year, both LSU and Ohio State, but LSU just has very easily, very, very easily, the much, much better body of work. Doesn't mean I think LSU is a lot better team. It's just kind of comparing the teams and then looking at the body of work. No doubt, LSU is number 1. And what I said about Clemson, obviously they don't have the body of work as LSU, Ohio State. Doesn't mean I don't think they can compete with them. They definitely can compete with those teams. Seems like Clemson, once the playoff time hits, they're ready to roll. They're a much better team. It very well could happen. And kind of going back to my Pac-12 discussion, I kind of brought up how Arizona State actually could be a pretty good win if Oregon handles them pretty well. And I thought UCLA was an impressive win for Utah. Looking at the Pac-12, those teams they're doing the same thing as the Big Ten. They're kind of beating each other. Arizona State was ranked for a while. They beat Michigan State early in the year when Arizona State was still trying to figure out, their identity. And, and then you're kind of just splitting. UCLA beats Arizona State. Colorado's in the mix, beating some of those teams, losing some of these teams. I think the Pac-12 is pretty underrated. They're doing the same exact thing the Big Ten is. They don't have an Ohio State, but they're not far off. But they have Utah and Oregon. I'm starting to think the Big Ten's very overrated, honestly. Just really what made me decide that is a build-up through the non-conference games, and then you going into Big Ten where they're only playing each other they're playing each other who've struggled against the non-conference teams that they should have no problem with, and then kind of seeing that Minnesota-Iowa game. Neither team to me played good. Iowa outplayed them. Then Minnesota handled Penn State no problem the week before. It's just pretty much Ohio State, and we'll see that this week, Ohio State versus Penn State. And we'll have our picks, and I'll pick that game, but you can tell exactly where I'm going with that. But that is my top 6. We will reveal, again, the full top 25 here. And, yeah, talking about who can get in the playoff, I think it's really the top 8 teams really have the shot. I guess Florida could have some slight chance. Minnesota, too, I guess, the more I'm talking about it. But they need a lot of help because Minnesota, they still will be against Ohio State in the Big Ten Championship. If they beat Ohio State, you would think maybe the committee throws Minnesota in, Ohio State out. I mean, there's a chance they neither make it. You would think if that happened, that Ohio State's out. I just don't see it happening, but I'm just playing the what-if game. So that could be interesting. LSU, the thing with LSU, that could be interesting if they win out and then lose to Georgia in the SEC title game. What do they do with LSU, who's been the number 1 team all year? Do they throw them out? Georgia obviously would have to be in. Clemson, I don't see them losing. If they do, at some point they will be out, and no ACC team will be in. You're looking at Bama. Yeah, the Bama's in a tough spot. Even though they're 1 spot out of the top 4, they're in a tough spot because they need to win out, which they will, I think. And then they kind of got to sit there and wait around for that LSU-Georgia game. Obviously, they want LSU to win because if LSU loses, and there's still going to be 2 SEC teams ahead of them. If Georgia wins the game, or if LSU wins the game, then Alabama will be ahead of Georgia most likely. The Pac-12 title game is going to be big time. To me, I think those 2 teams, if they win out, and then the winner of that Pac-12 title game, I think one of those teams will have done enough. I fear that they won't put Utah in if they win through, the rest of the way because of that USC loss kind of early to midseason. And in Oregon, they would put in because they lost the first game of the season to an SEC team. So I think if Oregon won out, the committee would definitely put them in. If Utah won out, be a close call there. The committee may like Oklahoma a lot. We've already seen they have. So they definitely have a chance too for them. We'll see. Tuesday nights. I record this on Monday. Tuesday nights where the college football playoff poll comes out. It should be very, very interesting. And things are really starting to get very interesting. But this is like the most confident I've felt about identities on team. Obviously, I'm always confident in my rankings. I would not make them if I'm not confident in them. But this is the most confident I've been on every team in here's identity. Like, I got a firm identity on a lot of these teams, and I feel comfortable moving teams with less or more losses ahead of teams with less losses, if that makes any sense. So let me know your guys' thoughts. I know people have questions in the comments, but I always answer those within the video, so hopefully those people did not skim through here. But I'll be happy to answer them this week in the comments. Like I said, more than college football videos, we got NFL coverage all the time as well, even in the offseason. So please subscribe, trying to get to that 40K goal. That's going to do it for this one, though. Thanks, everyone, for watching. Goodbye.